First of all, the challenger on my left, making a return to the Texas ring, his home state, from Dallas, Texas, Brian Adias.
Brian Gower was born in Denton County, Texas in 1960. The exact day depends on who you ask, as different sources give different days, but according to referee James Beard, Gower was born on July 1st, and I will not doubt Mr. Beard. Born into a middle-class family living in Lake Dallas, Gower may have gone on to lead the typical life of many other young boys that grew up in North Texas in the 1960s and 1970s. However, the fact that he was part of the Lake Dallas school system, where he met and befriended a classmate named Kerry Atkinson in first grade, planted the seed to mold his future. And Kerry was the son of Jack Atkinson, better known as wrestling icon Fritz von Erich, who also owned and operated the Dallas territory of the National Wrestling Alliance. Despite the fact that his best friend's father was one of the most famous names in the business, Brian was not a fan of pro wrestling and never gave it much thought. He did, however, like the fact he could work the cotton candy stand with Kerry at the Sportatorium in Dallas, where weekly wrestling cards were held, and got to split the money, usually walking away with a cool $50 when he was as young as 10 years old. Brian and Kerry both went on to excel in athletics at Lake Dallas High School. Brian played football his first 2 years, but was advised to stop playing after a severe concussion. Gower put his full attention and efforts into track and field, going on to be ranked 5th in the nation in the shot put, and earning a scholarship to the University of Texas at Arlington. At UT Arlington, Brian won the Southland Conference shot put title 4 consecutive years, and was the SLC indoor shot put champion his junior and senior year. That would later earn Gower a place on the Southland Conference 50th Anniversary Men's Indoor Track and Field Honor Roll in 2013. Though he had never shown interest in wrestling, Brian did work out with Kerry regularly and spent a lot of time with Kerry and his brothers, essentially becoming an extended member of the family. With Fritz seeing how hard he worked and liking the way he carried himself, Fritz offered to find a place for him in the territory. While still in college, and with the constant urging of Kerry, Brian began training to be a pro wrestler in 1979, with Fritz, Kerry, Bruiser Brody, and David Manning credited with being his trainers. It was also Fritz that gave Brian his first ring name while they were sitting in Fritz's office and Brian had his foot propped up. Fritz looked at Brian's shoe and saw the name Adidas. Brian Adias, Fritz said, pointing at the shoe. That's a good name. Brian had his first career match on August 31st, 1980 in a losing effort against Don Diamond at the Sportatorium in Dallas. Adias would later say of the 15-minute match that he was scared to death because no training could prepare him for wrestling in front of a crowd of people. Adias wrestled sporadically while he was still attending college, keeping his matches during school breaks and through the summer in 1980 and 1981. Brian took more losses as he gained experience facing the likes of Tim Brooks, Jesse Barr, and Armand Hussein, but finally picked up his first win on July 19, 1981, with a victory over Carlos Zapata at the Sportatorium. After graduating college with a degree in finance, Brian Adias began a full-time wrestling career in June of 1982. Proving to be a popular figure in the territory, recently rebranded World Class Championship Wrestling, Adias had fewer than 20 matches under his belt when he took his first championship. Brian Will Irwin for the World Class Television Championship on June 21, 1982 at Will Rogers Memorial Coliseum in Fort Worth. Adias held the TV title for about a month after losing it back to Irwin in the same building, but it was a month straight of high-profile weekly television appearances for the young wrestler, only increasing his popularity. Adias continued to gain experience through 1982, holding some of those veterans he lost to previously to time-limit draws, and often taking a win. In his first exposure on one of the big cards in World Class, Adias participated in a battle royal won by Ken Mantell, and took a pinfall victory over Frank Dusek at the 1982 Christmas Star Wars card at Reunion Arena. That Christmas card culminated in the famous incident when Terry Gordy slammed Kerry Von Erich's head in the door of a steel cage, igniting the Von Erich vs. Freebird feud, and sending the popularity of the territory into the stratosphere. As business surged going into 1983, Brian worked his way into the mid-card not only as a singles wrestler, but also taking on various tag team partners. Brian not only tagged with his friends Kerry and Kevin Von Erich, but also partnered up with the likes of Johnny Mantell and Bugsy McGraw. Brian also drew the envy of at least one Texas wrestling fan when he tagged with Velvet McIntyre to defeat Judy Martin and Magic Dragon in a mixed tag match at the Sportatorium in February 1983. Things were going well for Brian, but he still needed seasoning, and exposure to other wrestlers and territories was the best way to get it. After Adias had a quick swim through Mid-South Wrestling, Fritz arranged for him to go to Portland and work for Don Owen in the Pacific Northwest. Debuting in Portland in March 1983, Adias hit the ground running with a string of victories over Chief Tapu, Chris Colt, and Ali Hassan. Portland also gave Brian invaluable opportunities he wasn't getting in Dallas, tagging with the likes of a young Kurt Hennig and veterans like Stan Stasiak. Adias had an impressive string of victories over the summer of 1983, rarely taking the loss through June and July and into August, but it didn't seem to be leading to much at first. Finally, Brian joined forces with the recently turned babyface Buddy Rose, and the two began feuding with Rip Oliver and The Assassin over the Pacific Northwest Tag Team Championship. Adias and Rose took the titles on August 20th, 1983 at the Sports Arena in Portland, marking Brian's first tag title and first championship outside World Class. Adias and Rose only held the tag titles 11 days before they dropped them back to Oliver and The Assassin in Seattle, but the two teams continued to feud over the belts for several weeks. Brian continued to win in singles competition as well, even getting a shot at Dynamite Kid's Pacific Northwest Heavyweight Championship in September. After almost a year of seasoning in Portland, Brian returned to Dallas in December, but it came with a change. The shoe company Adias sent a letter to World Class Championship Wrestling asking Brian to stop using the name Adias, citing it as a registered trademark. The solution was easy enough. Brian simply dropped the second D from his name and became Brian Adias. There was never any public explanation given, and most fans seemingly just thought they heard his name wrong when he was in World Class previously. No matter the name he used, Brian wasted little time making a splash in his World Class return. Adias defeated Super Destroyer No. 1 for the television championship in his first match back in the territory, taking only 9 seconds to do so. Beating a member of Skandar Akbar's Devastation Incorporated fit right in with plans for Adias as he began tagging with Iceman King Parsons. Parsons had been feuding with Akbar's stable after the Notorious manager burned him with a fireball at the Thanksgiving Day Star Wars card. Adias and Parsons defeated the Super Destroyers for the American Tag Team Championship at the Christmas Star Wars card on December 25, 1983 at Reunion Arena. The feud was far from over as the Super Ds attacked Brian and Iceman after the bell, but Adias would not be a huge part of the feud over the next month. Brian spent most of that time with quick trips to Georgia, Mid-South, and Houston. Adias and Parsons dropped the tag belts back to the Super Destroyers on January 30th in Fort Worth, effectively ending Brian's part in the feud. After losing the tag titles, Brian went back to Mid-South for what was intended to be a short stop before going to Mid-Atlantic, but a tragedy made all plans change. In February of 1984, David Von Erich died as he was getting ready for a tour in Japan. As a longtime friend of the family, Brian was devastated by David's death. Adias would later say of all the tragedies surrounding the Von Erich family over the next few years, David's was the worst, as it was so unexpected. In a way, it would also play a part in molding Brian's future in World Class. Coming back to Dallas, Brian stood in for Iceman King Parsons in a match against Jim Neidhart that next Monday night as Iceman replaced Kevin Von Erich in the main event. Staying in Dallas for a few extra days on a personal level, Brian would eventually make his way to Charlotte, North Carolina, and Mid-Atlantic Wrestling in March. What turned out to be an almost year-long run in Jim Crockett's Mid-Atlantic territory proved to be a valuable teaching tool for Adias. Working mostly lower mid-card and getting a lot of TV time, Brian later credited Dory Funk Jr., Barry Windham, and Mike Rotundo among the wrestlers who helped the most with his development. Despite the negatives of long road trips and a brutal travel schedule, the positives that came out of Mid-Atlantic helped shape Brian into a more well-rounded in-ring talent. Adias even got a bit part in a movie, sort of, while in Mid-Atlantic, with in-ring footage of Brian being used in the scene of the 1985 horror movie Silver Bullet. Brian challenged Tully Blanchard several times for the NWA Television Championship, as well as getting a few shots at the Mid-Atlantic Heavyweight Championship against Ron Bass, and both the Mid-Atlantic and World Tag Team Championships with various partners. Adias never took any of the titles in the Mid-Atlantic. However, he would also make appearances in the Toronto-based Maple Leaf Wrestling in the summer of 1984. On June 10th, Adias defeated Don Kernodle for the NWA Canadian Television Championship. In fact, Adias was the last wrestler to hold that title, as it was deactivated about a month later. By February 1985, it was time for Brian to return home to Texas and World Class Championship Wrestling. After a short-lived tag team with Johnny Mantell unsuccessfully challenged the Midnight Express for the American Tag Team titles, Adias seemed to be settling in for a standard mid-card run. On July 29, 1985, the run turned out not to be as standard as it appeared. During a TV taping of Championship Sports at the Will Rogers Memorial Coliseum in Fort Worth, Adias challenged Gino Hernandez for the Texas Heavyweight Championship in a best 2 out of 3 falls match. Adias surprised Hernandez with a crossbody to take a first fall victory, but Hernandez took the second fall after hitting Adias with a shoulder breaker. With Adias favoring that shoulder throughout the third fall, it looked like the veteran Hernandez would retain as he worked over the injured part of the body. Brian finally got his opportunity to fight back, avoiding a charge by Gino against the turnbuckles. Basically working with one arm, Adias went on offense for a short period. The crafty Hernandez regained the upper hand, but was unable to put Adias away. As Hernandez became more frustrated, Adias surprised him with a small package to win the match and take the Texas title. An elated Adias celebrated in the ring as best friend Kerry Von Erich joined him, leaving Gino to throw a fit. During a post-match interview, Adias was interrupted by Gino returning to the ring, but he didn't come alone. Hernandez's tag team partner Chris Adams came up behind Brian, and the two beat Adias down before cutting his hair, making him the latest in a line of unsolicited haircuts from Adams and Hernandez. Kevin, Kerry, and Mike Von Erich hit the ring to chase away the so-called dynamic duo. The haircutting incident could have been setting things up for a decent feud between Adias and Hernandez. As it was, Brian tagged with Kerry in a victory over Hernandez and Adams a few weeks later, but another tragedy around that same time changed whatever plans might have been on the table. Mike Von Erich was stricken with toxic shock syndrome after surgery on his shoulder in late August 1985. The near death of the youngest Von Erich brother put Mike out of wrestling for several months and left the Von Erichs one man short in their quest for the World Six-Man Tag Team Championship. Family friend Adias was the obvious choice to fill in for Mike. At the Labor Day Star Wars card on September 2, 1985, Adias dropped the Texas title back to Gino Hernandez at the Tarrant County Convention Center in Fort Worth. Adias would not leave without a belt, however, as Brian tagged with Kevin and Kerry Von Erich in the main event that night against Mark Lewin, One Man Gang, and Jack Victory. Adias and the Von Erichs won the match to take the World Six-Man Tag Team Championship. As it was with any wrestler outside the family that tagged with the Von Erichs, there was a feeling of Brian being the other guy in the Six-Man Tag Team Championship. Still, his third of the title and the fact that he would regain the Texas Heavyweight Championship from Gino Hernandez before the end of September solidly put Adias in the title picture in World Class and found him closer to the top of the card. Brian successfully defended the Texas title through the fall and winter of 1985 while continuing to tag in six-man matches with Kevin and Kerry. As 1986 approached, changes were coming, and that was reflected in the titles. Brian dropped the Texas title to the Grappler on December 9th in Fort Worth, roughly a month after Lance Von Erich made his debut in the territory. On January 3, 1986, Brian, Kevin, and Kerry lost the six-man tag team championship to the Fabulous Freebirds at the Sportatorium in Dallas. In February 1986, World Class broke away from the NWA and became the World Class Championship Wrestling Association, recognizing their own world champion. This was part of the world of wrestling reshaping, and the first few steps of the National Wrestling Alliance coming apart at the seams. While Lance slipped into the third spot for the Von Erich six-man tag team, Brian would get another run with the Texas Heavyweight Championship after regaining the title from the Grappler on March 10th. Adias held the belt into the summer of 1986 before dropping it to Buzz Sawyer at the Independence Day Star Wars card. Meanwhile, circumstances beyond his control were setting the stage for World Class and making it apparent changes were needed again. In June, Kerry Von Erich had a horrendous motorcycle accident that mangled his right foot and put him out of action for several months. For better or worse, Mike Von Erich returned to the ring less than a year after his battle with toxic shock and stepped into Kerry's place in the six-man tag championship. Brian knew the only way to solidify his presence in the main event for World Class was to either be a partner for the Von Erichs or be against them. With no indication he would be getting the Texas title back, and his most notable match, a tag appearance with Scott Casey losing in the World Tag Team Championship tournament in September, Brian presented an idea to the powers that be in World Class. Brian Adias wanted to turn heel. With several notable wrestlers either gone or on their way out, World Class went with the idea, hoping to capture the same kind of interest Chris Adams' heel turn provided in 1984. This time making it more personal, as it was widely known by local fans Adias was a childhood friend of Kerry. What better way to seal the heel turn than to begin with who could be seen as the most vulnerable Von Erich. Fans expected an October 24, 1986 match between Adias and Mike Von Erich to be a friendly contest with no rules broken. When Mike quickly countered Brian's moves and got several near pinfalls put Adias on his heels, Brian stepped forward to offer a handshake. To the surprise of everyone in the crowd, when Mike took Brian's hand, Adias sucker punched the young Von Erich and began attacking him. After a Russian leg sweep gave Adias the victory, making Brian the only opponent to pin Mike Von Erich at the Sportatorium in Dallas, Adias continued to attack Mike after the bell. Even Steve Simpson, who came to the ring to try and calm things down, was attacked by Adias, who then quickly left the ring. During a taping of Championship Sports in Fort Worth the following Monday, Adias came to the ring for an interview segment. Alongside him was Al Madrill, a longtime popular figure in the Dallas territory through the 1970s and early 1980s. Before the interview could get going, Kerry Von Erich came to the ring, still making use of crutches after his motorcycle accident. Kerry wanted to know why Adias attacked Mike and why he hadn't returned his phone calls over the weekend. Doing his best to ignore Kerry's questions, Brian said he had been spending time with Al and saw the new car and new house Madrill was buying and said he wanted to stick with Al to make it to the top. When Kerry again tried to confront Adias, Madrill interrupted and began mocking Kerry. The confrontation escalated and eventually Madrill attacked Kerry, centering on Von Erich's injured leg. Even announcer Mark Lawrence got involved trying to pull Kerry to safety until Kevin Von Erich came from the back to attack Madrill. Even though he didn't take part in attacking Kerry, it was made clear what side Adias was on in the skirmish when he attacked Kevin while Madrill held him. The heel turn was complete. The feud got off to a strange start, with Madrill mysteriously absent through most of November and Adias tagging with the likes of Buzz Sawyer and Black Bart against some combination of Kevin, Mike, and Lance Von. That set up matches for Adias and Madrill against Kevin and Mike for the tag titles, the first of which took place at the 1986 Christmas Star Wars card in Dallas, with Adias and Madrill escaping with the belts. Adias and Madrill would become part of a new stable of wrestlers put together by manager Gary Hart and Vince Apollo. The tag champs joined Al Perez in the group going into 1987. That would only add fuel to the fire in Brian's feud with the Von Erichs, as Hart had been a longtime nemesis of the family. In February 1987, things took a turn in real life when Kerry Von Erich briefly returned to the ring for a couple of matches against Adias. For the feud, it seemed to be the natural route as the two former best friends battled in the ring. Unfortunately, while Kerry himself was ready to return, his foot was not. A match in Fort Worth between Brian and Kerry went well, but a match 4 days later at the Sportatorium in Dallas saw Kerry re-break his injured foot. Kerry would be out again for almost 9 months. What fans didn't know at the time is Kerry would actually have his foot amputated and wrestled the remainder of his career with a prosthetic. During the years of kayfabe, you never let a good injury go to waste. In storyline, Adias was blamed for re-breaking Kerry's foot and increasing his heat with fans. With Kerry vowing revenge from a hospital bed, Adias turned his attention to Mike Von Erich. Unfortunately, it was another plan brought to a halt by tragedy. Around the time Adias and Madrill lost the World Tag Team titles to the Fantastics in Lubbock, Mike pinned Adias in a singles match in 5 seconds. Adias issued a challenge, putting up $2,500 that would go to Mike if Von Erich could pin him in less than 10 minutes. Adias continually jumped out of the ring to kill time, leaving the frustrated Von Erich protesting in the ring. Eventually, Adias would lock up with Von Erich, with Mike getting several near pinfalls before Adias exited the ring again. With seconds remaining in the match, Von Erich hit Brian with a dropkick off the top rope, but time ran out before Mike could secure the pin. Adias escaped with the $2,500, but raised the ire of world-class fans further. On April 3rd at the Sportatorium, Adias attacked Mike in the ring after Mike defeated Mike Williams, taking off his belt and whipping the young Von Erich. Mike would manage to get the belt, but Adias ran from the ring before getting any payback. In a post-match interview, Mike challenged Adias to a country-whipping lumberjack match to be held at the 4th annual David Von Erich Memorial Parade of Champions the following month. That match would never take place. While Mike appeared fine physically, his health and mental stability were not good after his near death from toxic shock. Literally hours after his last match, Mike Von Erich went missing. The young Von Erich would be found a few days later at Louisville Lake, where he had taken his own life. For the second time in 4 years, Brian would bury a longtime friend. This time, because of kayfabe, he wasn't able to mourn publicly. Already dwindling attendance numbers in World Class fell even further after Mike's death, as it was one too many tragedies for some fans. While house shows in Dallas still drew okay, Fort Worth and bigger shows were not bringing fans out like they had been. For Brian, it might have been the seed of losing interest in the business. Adias would be in a country whipping lumberjack match at the renamed David and Mike Von Erich Memorial Parade of Champions in May 1987. Skip Young took Mike's place in the match and defeated Adias with only 5,900 fans in attendance, which was more than 18,000 fewer than the previous year's Parade of Champions. Just a week after the Parade of Champions, there was another near tragedy that has only fully come to light in recent years. In an 8-man tag match at Will Rogers Memorial Auditorium in Fort Worth, Adias tagged with Al Madrill, Al Perez, and Black Bart against Bobby Fulton, Tommy Rogers, Bruiser Brody, and Kevin Von Erich. With Adias and Kevin the legal men in the ring, Kevin suddenly fell to the mat and began convulsing. Recognizing it was not part of the match and something was wrong, Tommy Rogers entered the ring and administered CPR on Kevin. No video of the match was ever shown on television, and the official result was listed as a no contest. What actually happened to Kevin in that match has never been revealed. With only those in attendance seeing what happened, and many of them likely not sure what they had just seen, fans were told Adias had developed a new finishing maneuver called the Oriental Tool. Adias would take his thumb and strike his opponent in a specific area on the side of the head, putting them in a seizure-like state. Not surprisingly, Kevin took some time off before going on tour in Japan in June. During his absence, Adias would need a new foe. After Adias and Madrill made an unsuccessful attempt to regain the World Tag titles, the team split and began feuding with each other, with Madrill stepping into the role of fan favorite. During a lumberjack match between the two at the Sportatorium on a night they drew a decent crowd, Adias used his Oriental Tool on television for the first time. With Kerry Von Erich providing color commentary, Madrill dominated through most of the match, busting Adias' head open early on. After about 8 minutes, Adias backed Madrill into a corner and unleashed with the tool, sending Madrill falling to the mat. Adias was declared the winner as wrestlers came to the ring to call for help from a doctor, while a stunned crowd looked on. The new move seemed to intrigue fans enough that when Adias was on the card, attendance increased over the next few weeks. However, World Class took an unusual turn with the angle. Instead of tearing through a parade of enhancement talent and lower mid-carders, it was essentially 50-50 booking. Adias beat Madrill in Dallas, but lost to him in Austin. Shortly after the Oriental Tool was presented, in storyline, Kevin Von Erich broke Adias' thumb in Fort Worth, forcing him to wear a cast. For all intents and purposes, the Oriental Tool was already neutralized. Adias went on to form a tag team with Frankie Lancaster and take the WCWA World Tag Team Championship from Shawn Simpson and Skip Young on October 10, 1987, in Fort Worth. The feud with the Von Erichs was not over either, as Adias continued to face off against Kevin and a returning Kerry Von Erich. Adias and Lancaster dropped the World Tag titles to Kevin and Kerry in late November at a card in Shreveport, Louisiana. By the end of the year, the Fabulous Freebirds were returning to World Class, and it was clear they were hoping to reignite the famous Von Erich vs. Freebird feud. Going into 1988, World Class merged with the outlaw promotion Wild West Wrestling. Wild West was kept active, and matches at Billy Bob's Texas were kept by World Class as a B show. Adias spent most of 1988 working the Wild West side of the company, but did return in October to battle Kevin Von Erich to a double disqualification at the Cotton Bowl Extravaganza, which only drew about 4,500 fans. The writing was on the wall, and Adias could read it clearly. Fewer fans meant less money. Not being in the main event meant even less money than that. With a degree in finance in his back pocket, Brian decided to leave pro wrestling behind. His last recorded match for World Class was a victory over Vince Apollo at Will Rogers Memorial Center in Fort Worth on October 17, 1988. Brian was not quite done with pro wrestling just yet. Once again a babyface, Adias would return for a month-long run in the Dallas-based Global Wrestling Federation in 1991 before stepping away again. In September of 1997, Adias popped up in the Continental Wrestling Alliance, forming a tag team known as the Dogs of War with Mike Blackheart, and feuding briefly with Terry Garvin. In the summer of 1998, Adias wrestled sporadically in NWA Southwest, even taking their version of the Texas Heavyweight Championship in early 1999. On March 12, 1999, Brian Adias had his last recorded match, defending the NWA Southwest Texas Heavyweight Championship against Jimmy James in North Richland Hills. The match ended in a no contest, and Brian Adias quietly slipped into retirement. Outside wrestling, Brian found success in a variety of jobs, working for ExxonMobil and as a finance officer for a car dealership, as well as venturing into his own business centered on weight loss nutrients. Brian is now semi-retired and still living in the Dallas area, and will be celebrating his 9th wedding anniversary with his wife Monica around the time this video is released. Compared to many other wrestlers, Brian Adias had a relatively short career, but packed a lot in that short time. More importantly, his story doesn't end in tears as so many others did. Brian did his share of partying back in the day, as almost everybody did, but it never got to the point that he let it define him. He came out of pro wrestling healthy and as hardworking as ever. In fact, he looks like he could still step in the ring. Even if he doesn't, he will forever have a place in the memories of world-class fans at the height of its popularity.
And accepted. Ring the bell. Here we go. And the Super D helps Akbar the ring. Here's Adias. Takes it down. 1, 2. Hey! It's all over! It's just a few seconds. Oh, boy.
Unbelievable time of 9 seconds. The new television champion, Brian Adias.
Wow, that didn't take long.
9 seconds.
9 seconds. It didn't even seem like that long.